Just a quick good morning on behalf of the FACC-Chicago. I wish we could be together, but not yet, maybe in a couple more months. I hope that all of you and your families are well. We're happy to have you here this morning for a topic that is, of course, of growing interest as more and more people are working from home and trying to figure out the logistics and the safety of doing business from the comfort of their homes. So I'm going to turn it over to Tim Palmer, CyberSafe360, who's been a longtime member of the FACC and presented at one of our live lunches a few years ago. But a lot has changed since then. So I'm going to turn it over to him and let him take over. So you should be seeing his PowerPoint slides. If you want to see, there's a trick if you don't know it already when you're watching a presentation. If you don't want to see all of the participants on your screen, you go to the top right side of the speaker's image. You put the three-point drop-down menu, and then you pin the video, and then you can flip it so that all you'll see is the PowerPoint presentation and the person presenting. All right, I'm going to mute myself now and turn it over to Tim. Thanks again.
And thank you so much. Thank you everybody for joining us on this webinar this morning. I know it's early, and there are 1,000 challenges in addition to cybersecurity in regards to working remotely. And so I do appreciate you taking the time to attend, and I do hope that you get something valuable from this webinar and a few takeaways. I am Tim Palmer. I'm the Managing Director of CyberSafe360, and we're a Chicago-based full-service cybersecurity firm, and we cater exclusively to small and medium-sized businesses, providing customized solutions that focus on all aspects of cybersecurity: people, processes, technologies, and facilities.
May I interrupt you for just a minute? I think you need to put your screen on presentation mode.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. So you're not seeing anything on your end?
I am. It's just that I think I'm seeing it as you see it with the next slide on the right side. I think if you put it on presentation mode, we'll only see the slide that you're talking about.
Okay. I apologize for that. Let me take care of this. How's that?
Good.
Okay. Thanks for that tip. Yeah, a lot has changed since we last presented in front of the French American Chamber of Commerce. Of course, as we know, over the last couple months, the COVID-19 pandemic has created an unprecedented rush to work remotely. This has been a huge change for many organizations, and this work from home dynamic has also created an opportunistic situation for the hackers and phishers as well. So in addition to adjusting from working from home, emotions are really running high as employees have to focus on their children, their finances, their health concerns, and hackers are taking advantage of this period of emotional turmoil and of people's fear and their need of information on health, safety, and even financial aid. And to top that off, now every home device or wireless connection is a new potential entry point for hackers. So the webinar is really focused on how do we protect ourselves from cyber attacks when we're working from home during COVID-19. And so if folks do have questions, feel free to put them in the chat window. It's a rather short presentation, only about 30 minutes or so, and I'll address any questions through the chat at the end of the presentation, or feel free at the end to email me directly and I can answer any industry specific questions you might have, or questions in regards to your unique remote working situation. So in today's webinar, what we'll do is we'll take a look at the cybersecurity landscape, and we'll first discuss what cyber threats are out there, and we'll take a look at what it looked like in 2019, and we'll take a look at how that cybersecurity landscape has changed with the advent of COVID-19, and we'll finish up with discussing some security tips for working remotely. So what did that cybersecurity landscape look like in 2019? Well, as we know, cybersecurity has been growing as an industry and as an issue year after year. Cybercrime has expanded exponentially as bad actors have developed new and more sophisticated ways of attack. So in 2019, the FBI compiled a report called the 2019 Internet Crime Report, and here were some of the things that they found at the end of the year. So as far as hot topics in 2019, as far as seeing a dramatic increase in activity, business email compromise and email account compromise topped the charts. What I'd like to do during the presentation as well is I'd like to provide a definition of what some of these threats are. A recent study had just come out showing that there is a large discrepancy on the terminology that's being used in cybersecurity. So if you'll indulge me, I'll go into each of these a little bit more in detail just so that we are all talking the same language. So business email compromise and email account compromise, these are sophisticated scams that target both businesses and individuals who perform transfer of funds. What happens is that a hacker will compromise legitimate business email accounts through social engineering or computer intrusion techniques in order to conduct unauthorized transfers of funds. So over the years, these scams have evolved to include compromise of personal emails, vendor emails, spoofed lawyer emails, requests for W-2 information, and so on. And then we also saw in 2019 that there was an increase in scams focusing on the diversion of payroll funds. Next on the hot topics of 2019 was something we're probably all familiar with, ransomware. This is a form of malware that targets both human and technical weaknesses in an effort to make critical data and or your systems inaccessible. Ransomware is usually delivered through phishing techniques or through remote desktop protocol, which allows computers to connect to each other across networks. Elder fraud was big in 2019. This was on the rise, in which victims over 60 are targeted by perpetrators because they are believed to have significant financial resources. Some of these scams included advanced fee scams, tech support scams, and government impersonation scams. And tech support fraud. Tech support is continuing to be a big problem, and especially as we move remotely, as we'll see. This scheme involves criminals who impersonate support or service representatives, and they call in to offer to resolve such issues as compromised emails or bank accounts, or to address and resolve issues on your computer, such as a virus. The most common crime types in 2019, according to the FBI, were phishing, vishing, smishing, and farming. And so phishing has been around since the beginning, and this is a cybercrime which targets individuals, but via email, telephone in the case of vishing, text messages in the case of smishing, and it's usually by somebody who's posing as a legitimate institution, and they're trying to lure individuals into providing sensitive information and data such as personally identifiable information, banking and credit card details and passwords and such. This information is then used to access important accounts and can result in identity theft and financial loss. And as we mentioned briefly, vishing is that practice of making phone calls or leaving voice messages and trying to get the individuals to reveal personal information to do the same. Smishing is same practice, but using text messages. Farming is the practice of trying to direct internet users to visit a bogus website that mimics the appearance of a legitimate site. And they do this in order to obtain personal information such as passwords, account numbers, etc. The next top crime in 2019 was non-payment and non-delivery. What this is when goods and services are shipped, but payment is never rendered, or in non-delivery situations, goods and services are never rendered, but payment is sent. Extortion, which is self-explanatory, and personal data breach. Personal data breach are leaks or spills of personal data that is released from a secure environment to an untrusted environment. This also refers to incidences in which individual sensitive, protected, or confidential data is copied, transmitted, viewed, stolen, or used by unauthorized individuals. The top three crimes of all these with the highest reported losses or business email compromise, confidence romance fraud, and spoofing. So if you take a look at all of 2009, total losses because of these crimes listed here were in excess of $3 billion in the United States alone. Any questions on those in regards to those top threats that we saw in 2019 and the cybersecurity landscape as we entered into 2020? Okay, so going into 2020 now, the cybersecurity landscape with the COVID-19 pandemic. So COVID-19 hits the world, and then there's a rush to work remotely. So how does this change the cybersecurity landscape? Well, for starters, those threats that we just discussed that dominated 2019, well, guess what? Those are still here. However, as a result to move remotely, people are changing the level of visibility for cyber attacks. People are spending more time on their work and personal computers. They're using personal computers for work and work computers for personal use. They're conducting more virtual meetings like the ones we're doing today, and they're using email much more than they have, in just a month before. And so there's an opportunity now to exploit these individual systems by hackers, and it's increased dramatically. So as a result, we are seeing some emerging trends that are developing as a direct result of the COVID-19 pandemic. And the one thing that all these threats have in common is that they are all COVID-19 related. So what we're seeing is a dramatic increase in social engineering, phishing, email-related vulnerabilities. We're seeing a rise in insider threat, specifically with data exfiltration, seeing an increase in wire transfer and email financial fraud. We're seeing an increase in the creation of fake websites, and we're seeing the creation of fake apps. And once again, most of the emerging threats that we're seeing are COVID-19 related. So if you take a look at this infographic that shows the COVID-19 related threats in just Q1 of 2020, which was put together by Trend Micro, there were a little over 900,000 new spam messages related to COVID-19. This represented a 220 times increase in spam. And as you see here too, the top location for spam and malware detections was the United States. So the threats from a cybersecurity perspective due to COVID-19 has increased dramatically in just a couple months. So let's dive a little deeper into understanding what these threats are, and in some cases what they look like. So the number one threat out there by far is still social engineering. Social engineering is the psychological manipulation of people. It's trying to get them to perform actions and or divulge confidential information. And the thing is, social engineering relies on emotions. People are dealing with a lot of emotion now. People are being laid off. They're thinking about COVID-19 and other health issues. They are having to adjust to the stresses of working at home. And when people get worked up, the result is a decrease in critical thinking. And the bad guys know this. They're aware that many users across the globe are quarantined, and they're spending more time on their computers. They're taking advantage of the turmoil to rile people up. And as we've seen, their techniques are becoming much more sophisticated. So social engineering usually is seen via four vectors, which we saw on the previous slide: phishing, vishing, smishing, and then also impersonation. So let's talk about phishing a little bit. So phishing is obviously the number one threat. In 2019, 91% of all successful data breaches were phishing related. And now, due to the quarantines, people are on their computers more often and they're using email more often. So it probably isn't a surprise that COVID-related phishing is also on the rise. So there's a lot of ways to measure phishing attacks. One of the metrics is to track and report what hackers are, when hackers are using new phishing templates. So what you see on the screen right now are some examples of brand new phishing templates that were just reported last week. So if you see with these in the bold, this is the header in the email that the victim receives. And usually you're going to see a header that tries to grab a victim's attention and play on their fears, emotions, or interests. And then followed by that header, you're going to see what the attacker is attempting to do. And in each of these scenarios, the hacker is trying to get the victim to click on a link or to direct them into divulging sensitive information. There's an organization out there called KnowBe4, and they specialize in phishing simulation and training. And one of the things they do is they track these new reports of brand new phishing templates that appear on the internet. And these phishing templates are designed to try to get through the different levels of security that networks have put in place to block spam and so forth. And so to give you an idea of how much it's increased in just the last couple of months, in the middle of March, they reported 16 new templates being used. In the last week of March, an additional 36 were reported. And then in the first couple of weeks of April, 92 new templates were reported. And so as you can see, as folks are spending more time on their computers and using email, hackers are keeping pace and trying to get through them to try to social engineer them into releasing their information. Here are a couple examples of COVID-19 phishing email types that have also been reported within the last few weeks. We're still seeing ongoing business email compromises, and these are scams that try to trick targets into transferring money. And what we're seeing now is that these scams are using the COVID disease as the hook to trick victims into transferring money to the criminal who's posing as someone within the same company. And in these sort of emails, the tricksters using the ongoing health crisis of COVID-19 to push for urgent action. There's also been detected emails that claim to be relief or health organization, and they're asking for donations, and usually asking for donations in Bitcoins. And in a lot of these emails, similar to the one like this, they're claiming to be groups that are supposedly associated with legitimate health organizations. And they provide information on where folks can click on a link to donate when they do ask for aid. We're seeing emails being sent all over the globe, of course, and many of these emails are disguised as coming from official organizations, government organizations, health organizations, and so forth. These emails are containing updates and recommendations connected to the disease. And like most email spam attacks, they also include malicious attachments. And so the example being shown right now is one that came with an attachment that reportedly would provide some latest updates on COVID-19, but it actually carried malware. We're also seeing an increase in spam emails that are related to shipping transactions. People are ordering online more than ever. And these particular emails are about shipping delays that are due to the spread of the disease, or they're providing a shipping update. And in both cases, the attachment, which supposedly contains the details of like the new shipping schedule, also includes malware. And then we're seeing a variety of coronavirus-related emails, similar to just spam of the past, that have malicious attachments attached to them as well. So the next emerging threat, in addition to the phishing that we just discussed, is we are seeing an increase in insider threat in terms of data exfiltration. So what is data exfiltration? This is sometimes referred to as data extrusion, data exportation, or even data theft. But all these terms are used to describe the unauthorized transfer of data from a computer or other device. So what's happening? Well, when people are working remotely, people occasionally break rules and do things that they shouldn't do. For example, let's say you are working remotely and you want to print something off of your work computer. Will the average worker take the time to configure their home printer with their work computer? Or will they send it to their personal email and then print that off their personal email? This is an example of data exfiltration. And as you've guessed, there's been a large increase in employees using their personal emails for work purposes. Other examples of data exfiltration are employees that have been laid off due to the quarantine, and they're taking the info off of their computers before the company has a chance to retrieve them. Another example is people accidentally sending emails to unintended recipients. We tend to see this happen when people are forwarding to personal emails or using personal emails for work purposes. The bottom line here is that there's less visibility when working remotely, and hence there's also a perception out there that there's less risk at getting caught. We've seen an increase in emerging trends with wire and transfer email financial fraud. This is similar to business email compromise. So a common scenario would be it's a typical day working from home. An employee receives a friendly reminder email from a vendor they've known for years about an invoice coming due. The email is conversational. They ask about the employee's recent vacation, and then they remind the employee that a late payment for the invoice could result in a 20% surcharge if they don't handle it immediately. The employee recognizes the account representative's name, their email address, they see their branding in the email, and then they submit the invoice for payment without giving it another thought. And it's only until later that they realize that they responded to a fake email instead of the vendor's real email account. So we're seeing an increase in situations like this. What's been interesting is the increase in fake websites. We mentioned earlier about the use of farming to trick users into going to fake websites. Well, since the beginning of March, we've seen tens of thousands of new domains that are being registered using the terms Corona, COVID, epidemic, pandemic, and Wuhan. Some are legit, but many of these are fake. There's been an increase in the number of fake websites that pose as fake CDC sites, fake pharmaceutical sites, fake vendor sites. These sites are posing as sites where you can order PPE, N95 masks, different equipment. There's even sites for COVID-19 vaccine sales. These sites advertise that the vaccine is free and the user just has to pay for the shipping. In all these cases, either the money is taken and no product received, or the credit card just gets wiped out. Here's an example of one of those fake websites and what it looks like. And as you can see, these websites spoof the original sites almost down to a T. And so what they'll do is they'll ask for personal information. And in this case, this is one that was just taken down, being used over in England over the last couple of weeks. If the victims did put in their correct postal code, then they would be asked for personal information, and their credentials would be captured. We're also seeing an increase in fake coronavirus-related apps. And so there are a lot of coronavirus apps out there, and legit coronavirus apps do exist. They just do not exist or are not accessible in the United States. So for example, in South Korea, there's a coronavirus tracker app that tracks when and where a new patient is admitted for coronavirus. It alerts users if they breach a 100-meter radius of the last tracked whereabouts of a corona patient. And this particular app has been downloaded more than 1 million times. However, this app is not available in the US. And so to repeat, the US do not have any of these coronavirus tracker type apps. But as a result, there's been an increase in these, and these fake apps that are being downloaded definitely do install malware, spyware, and geolocation tracking software. So in addition to the emerging threats that we're seeing as a direct result of the COVID-19 pandemic, we're also seeing additional challenges that are arising from working remotely. Hackers are aware that many users are now across the globe are now quarantined, and they're spending more time using their work computers for personal reasons. Here's an example of personal activities performed on work-issued devices. So as you can see, in addition to work-related issues, they're checking, responding to personal emails, reading news stories, hitting research sites, social media, shopping online, streaming media, and playing games. And what's interesting from this infograph is it's not just the workers that are doing it, but it's the workers' friends and family as well that are accessing these computers. Hackers know this, and they're taking advantage of it, and they're going to target these activities, and they're going to use fake sites, entertainment sites, streaming sites, and so forth to appeal to users to try to access their endpoint systems. So some of the other additional challenges of working remotely from home is that working from home does increase the visibility of a company to a cyber attack. And here's some of the reasons why. First is that there's no separation, or there's decreased separation of work and personal use of the devices. And when that happens, people might be using devices that don't have antivirus, operating system, or software that's been updated to the latest versions. And this poses a definite security risk. A lot of folks are working off their personal devices, and they might not realize that they could already have existing malware on their devices. And as they connect to their company network via VPN, they might be transferring this malware from their personal computers to the company network. There's been an increase of non-secure RDP by third-party administrators. So RDP is Remote Desktop Protocol services, and these are the services that administrators use to remotely connect to other computers over networks. Over the last couple months since the coronavirus onset, the use of this service, RDP, has increased by over 36%, a huge, huge number. And with it, there are some folks that are not taking the necessary steps to secure this. And so hackers are taking advantage of the non-secure connections that are being made out there. Companies have a lack of policy and procedures pertaining to working remotely. In the rush to work remotely, some employees are not getting the guidance or training needed to maintain security on their home systems. People have a tendency of storing their passwords on internet browsers for safety or for convenience sake and so forth. This, of course, will pose a direct risk as they are using these devices for work and then connecting to their networks via VPN. On their home systems, folks have not changed the default passwords on their routers. And in some cases, folks are using older routers where the firmware, similar to other software programs, have not been updated. And old routers can be compromised. And then in some cases, folks are connecting to open networks, and they're connecting in places that do not have encryption security controls in place. So it seems like a long list, right? Doesn't it? Well, the good news is that we can do something about it, and we can effectively increase our security when working from home. So here are a couple of technical tips that we recommend that if you do put in place, will effectively increase that security of working from home. So the first one, which is probably the toughest for some folks, is separate the use of work and personal devices. And so we know this is easier said than done. However, this is a huge, huge step. Ask yourself, do you use personal devices to share information over your home network? Do you have a child at home being homeschooled now and turning in digital assignments? Are you ordering groceries and food online to avoid stores? If you are, then it's best to separate your main work computer from your home computer. Don't send work emails from your private email address. Don't pay your personal bills online from your work computer. Don't visit social networking sites from your work computer. The next tip we can give you is protect your devices with antivirus solutions and firewalls. Update these programs. Make sure they have the latest updates, and not just the software, but the operating systems and the firmware, which is the built-in components of your devices. And when we're talking about home networks and routers, you can verify with your cable provider that they are currently, that they have been, and currently are upgraded to the most updated firmware on your router, your home router. Disable that use of password saving on your browsers. And very important here is, for your employees, know who to call and what to do in case of a suspected data breach. A lot of the laws revolved around protecting and keeping private personally identifiable information and so forth, is dealing with how to respond to a data breach. So, talk with your administrators, your your management to find out who you need to call and what to do in the case that, that you think you have been breached. This includes when you are getting hit by spam, let your IT department know about that and report, any of these issues. With your home routers, configure Wi-Fi encryption. Use strong passwords. Some of the basic cyber hygiene techniques are still in play, though you're working at home. A lot of folks have an open wireless at their own home, so your router does enable you to configure Wi-Fi encryption. And also a simple technique is, but an important one, is change all the default passwords on your devices that you have connected to your home network, but especially focus on your router. Change the router login and password. Goes without saying, use a VPN if you're connecting to unknown networks. And use multi-factor authentication whenever possible. This just adds an additional layer of security to the standard password method and of online identification that you're familiar with. So these are some of the technical tips. A couple of other tips I'd like to share with you are some obvious ones that a lot of folks tend to forget when working at home. But first is physical security tips. Make sure your work devices are physically safe. So in the case of lost or stolen devices, you don't want unauthorized views of confidential information that's on your work devices. So make sure your work devices are either shut down or locked. And this includes any mobile phones you might use to check email or to make work phone calls. If you live with others, be sure to lock your computer, even when you step away for just a bit. Don't test or tempt your roommates or family members by leaving your work open. This is something that's a practice you'd apply in the workplace, but it's also very important for working from home. If you don't have a separate workspace in your home, be sure to collect your devices at the end of the day and store them somewhere out of sight. This will help you keep them safe from being accidentally opened or stolen, but it also helps to separate that work life from home life. From a psychological perspective, create a comfortable working space. As you recall, when we talk about social engineering manipulates people and their emotions. So a comfortable working space contributes to your health and well-being and helps with control of those emotions and hence with critical reasoning. And finally, the last tip that we can give you is stay aware. Stay tuned into the cybersecurity landscapes and these evolving threats and remain vigilant against these. And so this is something that we always say, place a security awareness as some of the first things that you do versus a retrospective last thing that you do. So with this, I'd like to open it up for Q&A. For anyone that might have some questions on any of the slides that we discussed. Any thoughts, any questions?
Yes, I would. Okay.
Yes, Donna? Donna.
Hello, can I speak if Donna is not speaking? I'm Luisella.
Hi, Luisella.
Hello. I have several questions, but I'll try to be brief. Sure. One is a general question on how much the government is doing, because, for example, I've had calls also before this COVID-19 pandemic saying your social security account has been compromised, you must immediately phone us. Now, this has been going on for months, and I can't believe that no police, cyber police, has been after these people. It's always the same type of call. That's one question. Another question is, it's difficult sometimes to measure how much a hacker or has a hold on you, because recently I received a message saying, I know all about you, I have nasty pictures of you, which obviously are fake, and I'm going to destroy your social life if you don't immediately pay $1,000, right? Well, you want to know how much this pirate, in a sense, how much he has a hold on on your computer or not. He says you must absolutely click on this link, but if you don't, what can he do? Right. That's my and my last question is a more technical one about configuring Wi-Fi encryption. Because I don't know much about encryption. So those are my three questions. Thank you.
Okay, and well, let me give a brief response to each of those questions, and then for more of the technical what to do as far as the encryption, that is usually site specific. So Luizella, you know, I invite you to just give me a shout afterwards, and we can talk about it more in detail.
Thank you.
But just briefly, you know, your first question is, what is the government doing about it with these? And so, you know, depending on which government you're talking about and the nature of the crime would dictate a lot of what the response would be. So I'll kind of keep it to what's going on in the U.S. and so forth. A lot of it depends on where the source of the crime is coming from. You know, the nature of cybersecurity is that there are no borders anymore.
Right.
However, from a legal perspective, there's a matter of jurisdiction and, unfortunately, a matter of finance. So if you have cyber criminals that are operating out of the jurisdiction of the U.S. government, it is harder to collaborate with international resources to go after the bad guys, so to speak. But what are they doing about it? The first step that I would just give you is they can't really do anything about it unless they know about it. So if you're within the U.S., the FBI does have a Internet Crime Complaint Center, and then I will make this available to everyone on the phone call afterwards. That if you do have questions or a complaint on any internet-related crime, give these guys a call. And then, again, depending on the magnitude, nature of the internet crime and so forth, they'll be able to give you a better response as to what can be done. So, in regards to your second question, where you had asked, you know, how much does a hacker have a hold on you? How much information do they have access to, and do they really have it, and so forth? This was, of course, one of the major threats in 2019. This is extortion. And trying to hold this over and blackmail you into giving you, getting you to pay for release of this information. There's not a way to find out what they have on you in advance from our perspective, so to speak. It's more so of what you have had access to. So it's sort of like, horses out of the barn or the cats out of the bag type scenario. They have access to, on the surface, anything that you post on social media sites and public Wi-Fi. And it is amazing how much information that they can harvest. You know, they have algorithms that will pan these sites looking for anything related to you, and then use the information to convert into passwords to track into your banking and personal accounts and so on. These days, people are at home and kind of bored is list of questions of what favorite things to do, what are your favorite what you've done, what you hate, these sort of things, and take this information and they use these type of into those questions that you see as
Tim, you're breaking up a little bit.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Tim, you're breaking up a little bit. I think, at least on my side, I don't know if other people are hearing that too.
Yeah, breaking up. I'm sorry. Okay.
No, that's better. Whatever you just.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm not sure how much you got on it. Well, Louise, in this, there's really not much you can do when you're in the process of finding out what they have on you. So,
Tim, we're losing you again.
Yeah, Tim, you're breaking up.
I think it's on your side because I can hear everybody else.
Okay. Well, if you give me one moment, let me call in, and I'll just call in on a landline that way.
Great. And Louisa, just while Tim is calling in, so we will be sent. This is Molly, the FACC event.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
You're welcome. We will absolutely be sending follow-up info so that you can follow up with Tim on your own as well. I know he will be joining back in on a call, and that should be fine. But just in case you have follow-up questions, we do send a follow-up email, including the webinar recording.
Thank you so much.
And I know Donna had a question as well. Donna, again, Tim should be calling in soon, so we'll take your question next. But if for whatever reason that doesn't pan out, we'll absolutely make sure you get in touch with him on email. Luisella, in the meantime, I'm just going to mute you in case Tim is calling in, okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
656. This meeting ID does not exist. Please re-enter your meeting ID followed by pound.
Tim, do you hear us? I think it sounds like you're there.
Tim.
I'm still on my computer audio.
Okay.
Let me, do you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Right now it's okay.
Yeah, right now it's working.
Okay. Okay, so I'm not quite sure if I answered all your questions there, Luisella. Definitely let's talk on the encryption, and we can talk a little bit about what you can do at home.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Luisella. So Tim, I know Donna was up next. She had a really good question about, I believe, saving passwords on the cloud. Donna, I'm going to unmute you. Go ahead.
Hi, Tim. Thanks for being here today. I have a giant password list of over 300 for the entire organization, and I keep a password protected document Excel spreadsheet on my private drive. I'm wondering if that strikes you as really foolish.
Tim, you're muted. You've muted yourself. We can't hear you.
How about now, guys?
There you go.
All right. The joys of working remote, right? So Donna, let me answer your question this way. You know, and again, feel free to call me afterwards. So when we talk about security, we talk about different levels of protection that you can put in place. So definitely putting a password protected Excel sheet, right? Protecting that document is one level. As to storing it on a cloud drive, it would depend on what drive service you're using. You know, if you did mention personal, it depends on what type and level.
No,
so,
I meant, excuse me, I meant a OneDrive 365 team site.
Oh, okay. Okay. So from an aspect of that, and I'll just say this because I think it's important for everyone to know too, you kind of get what you pay for at the end of the day. So when you talk about free email accounts or free cloud storage drives and this sort of thing, those generally don't have encryption standards that you're looking for. But in the case of your particular system, you know, there's a couple configurations we'd look at, but generally speaking, you know, it would depend on who has access to that, Donna, right? Who's administering it and so forth. Microsoft OneDrive, they definitely have the security controls that can be put into place to make it a safe environment for sharing information. You just want to make sure that they're actually enabled.
Thank you.
And so you can call your admin person or you can call Microsoft.
Yeah, you're looking at her, or maybe you're not, but.
And then again, give me a shout and we can talk about, you know, the specifics of what to look for to make sure that those controls are enabled.
Thank you.
Sure.
Are there any other questions for Tim? Please.
Okay. Well, if there's no more questions, thank you everybody for your time and your attention. And again, feel free to give me a shout via email or
May I just ask, just if you have a little bit more time, just
I sure do.
this question of the list of passwords that one has. I have a list of my passwords simply on a Word document, and is that highly dangerous or not?
It's there are ways you can do, there are controls that you can set up, Louisella, that will help protect that information. So is it dangerous? You know, the other questions that you would have to ask is, you know, where is it stored? Who has access to the computer, and hence that list? Do you have any protection on it, on the document itself as being password protected? Do you have controls on your computer as far as passwords, second factor authentication that prevent people from accessing your computer? Is it encrypted? So these are all different levels of control that you can put into place to help protect that document. So in and of itself, if you had no controls in place, then that definitely would pose a security risk. But there are a lot of things that you can do to help protect that, as well as even using, you know, different storage, password storage services. And you know, a couple other things is, are you using computer for personal use versus work use? Does that computer connect to the internet at all? All those sort of things are things you can look at to determine if that's the safest place for you to store that list.
Okay, thank you. Then, yes.
Thank you. And we'll send everybody a follow-up email with Tim's information in email and a copy of this presentation. So if you have any questions later on, you can always be in touch, or we can send you an email introduction to Tim. If there are no other questions right now, thank you all very, very much. And Tim, unless you have any final words of advice and wisdom for everybody, we'll just wrap it up and say thank you. Thank you all very much for participating. We try to host about 2 webinars a week, and if you go to our website, you'll see the whole list of events there. We are also partnering now with the other US FACC chapters to promote and open up each other's webinars. So you have the choice of attending a lot of things, not just ours, but those of the other 17 FACC chapters around the US. So lots of things to enjoy. Thank you all again very much for being here. Have a good day, and please don't hesitate to contact us if we can answer any questions for you.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.